that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it's made to you during election time, and you are dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Happy to be with you. Let's start with the State of the Union. The President, Donald Trump, gave his second State of the Union address back on the 5th of February. It was a good speech. Seemed to be well received, unless you were a member of the media or a female member of Congress who happened to be a Democrat. But I digress. It was a good speech, in my opinion. I did go back. I didn't watch it live. I went back and watched a full tape of it and saw different things. And to be honest, I'll say it this way. Trump was Trump. He's not the most polished orator that you're ever going to hear. But the things he says seem to be things that he means. And now with 2 years of record as a president, you can actually compare what he says to what has occurred under him as president and figure out whether or not he means what he says or if he's, basically pulling your leg. I came to the conclusion that he means what he says. Now, interestingly to me, the Washington Post, of all places, gave a relatively balanced view when they summed up his speech in 3 minutes. So let's go ahead and hear how they took it. The speech took more than an hour, by the way.
Victory is not winning for our party. Victory is winning for our country. We must reject the politics of revenge, resistance, and retribution, and embrace the boundless potential of cooperation, compromise, and the common good. And exactly 1 century after Congress passed the constitutional amendment giving women the right to vote, we also have more women serving in Congress than at any time before. An economic miracle is taking place in the United States, and the only thing that can stop it are foolish wars, politics, or ridiculous partisan investigations. And then we had the case of the governor of Virginia, where he stated he would execute a baby after birth. To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children. who can feel pain in a mother's womb. Congress has 10 days left to pass a bill that will fund our government, protect our homeland, and secure our very dangerous southern border. But the proper wall never got built. I will get it built. But my relationship with Kim Jong-un is a good one. Chairman Kim and I will meet again on February 27th and 28th in Vietnam. The next major priority for me and for all of us should be to lower the cost of health care and prescription drugs and to protect patients with pre-existing conditions. After 24 months of rapid progress, our economy is the envy of the world. America is again winning each and every day. Members of Congress, the state of our union is strong.
Interesting. Very positive speech, even acknowledging the women in Congress. Most of them were Democrats now, of course. And acknowledging that hey, you guys have a great victory, you have a great accomplishment. If you know anything about Donald Trump, he does this all the time. He's always telling, quote unquote, what he thinks is the straight story. It's not about how it affects him. It's like, okay, hey, you guys at 100 years after the fact, now you have the most women that's ever served in Congress. Congratulations. That's who he is. That's how he does things. The fact that it may work against him doesn't change in his mind the fact that it is an accomplishment for the other side. This is the same guy who basically said Nancy Pelosi deserved the speakership. Nancy Pelosi is a blood enemy almost of Donald Trump. But Trump said, hey, if I have to do some things to make sure you get the speakership, then I'll do that. Now, am I crazy about Donald Trump for that? Heck no. I'm just saying that to illustrate that's who he is. So, was he genuine when he congratulated the female members of Congress? Yeah. Now, the interesting thing is this summary didn't go deep into the economy. But one thing it did, another thing it left out was a part of the speech which I think was extremely powerful in how it may have moved public opinion. And that was Donald Trump speaking a little bit at length on illegal immigration and its divide within the country.
No issue better illustrates the divide between America's working class and America's political class than illegal immigration. Wealthy politicians and donors push for open borders while living their lives behind walls and gates and guards. Meanwhile, working class Americans are left to pay the price for mass illegal immigration. Reduced jobs, lower wages, overburdened schools.
That was a very positive moment for the president. Speaking of jobs, the January jobs report, which came out, I believe, the Friday before the speech, you got to understand something. That was a blowout report. They came out with 100,000 jobs higher than were forecast. So when Donald Trump talks about the economy and talks about the jobs, he may not even talk about the stock market, because at the end of the day, the stock market isn't the economy, to be honest with you. The issue comes down to how many people are working and how many people are contributing to the economy, more so than how many are investing in the financial markets. 304,000 jobs were created in January, despite the shutdown. More than 100. Let me say that again. Despite the shutdown that people are saying it took $5 billion, $11 billion out of the economy, 300,000 jobs, and that was 100,000 more than forecast while the government was in its partial shutdown. In other words, the shutdown meant nothing to the economy, meant nothing to the job market. It only meant something to the government and those who are concerned about it. It was a good speech. It was a well-received speech, and it demonstrated, to the extent that she made the effort, why Nancy Pelosi did not want Donald Trump to have a forum when he could speak directly to the American people. In the same way you may recall when they had the argument, for lack of a better term, on camera in the White House when she was there with Senator Schumer, and the two of them were there with the president, and he was basically debating them openly, disagreeing with them in a Trumpian type of way, because this is just what Trump does. And Nancy was saying, we need to have this behind closed doors. We need to have... Nancy Pelosi wants things behind closed doors so she can lie about what happened behind closed doors. She doesn't want it so that they can actually have a negotiation and discussion. She wants it so she can come out later and lie. And she doesn't want Donald Trump to speak openly because Donald Trump is the same guy behind closed doors that he is in front of a microphone for the most part. And people either get him or they don't, and those that do get him a lot. How much? Well, according to the Gateway Pundit, the approval rate of the State of the Union speech, both for CNN and for CBS, was 76%, with 59% of those thinking it was very positive. So 59 out of that 76% said it was a very positive speech. They had a very positive response to it. 17% had a somewhat positive, and only 23% were negative. 3 out of 4. You want to know what's really tough if you're a Democrat? What's really bad if you're a Democrat is how many, let's break this down between Republicans, Democrats, and independents. 97% of Republicans approved of the speech. Almost everybody. Okay, well, I mean, that's not totally unexpected. These are, and this is among those who actually watched the speech. Of the Democrats who watched the speech, 30%, a little bit less than a third, they approved of the speech. Independents approved of the speech 82%. Do you really want to understand what's going on here? This is why you don't want Donald Trump speaking directly to the American people after 2 years of a stellar economic record, of a stellar job market, of getting rid of hostilities between the United States and North Korea, of pulling the United States out of wars that they stayed in throughout the Obama administration, of after cutting taxes and all this. And of course now we have the effort to smear the tax cut as, oh, people are getting shafted. I said, you know what? I'm not ready to believe that one. Full disclosure, I haven't filed my taxes for 2018. But I also have a way to look at this that matters. The question is not whether or not you got a refund or your refund is gone. The question is, what was your tax liability in 2017 versus your tax liability for 2018? If it's less, then that's all there is to it. That really is. I hear people saying things like, oh, I had a tax refund, now I owe. Well, you ended up having more money in your paycheck. Did you adjust your withholdings? Did you go talk to your tax advisor at the beginning of the year and say, hey, this is what's going to happen? What does that mean for me? Probably not. So I'm not convinced of that, particularly when the government is taking in, the federal government is taking in record revenues. But another thing about the speech that was fascinating, he talked about abortion. And he talked about how the governor of Virginia, who's got his own problems right now, was willing to execute a child that had been born if the doctor and the woman who gave birth, I'm not about to call her a mother, if the doctor and the woman who gave birth decide that they want to kill the child after it's been born, then they can still kill the child. That's not abortion anymore. That's infanticide. And that's what Democrats are about. And when Donald Trump said that Congress should outlaw that, where were the Democrat women? Oh, they were sitting. This is what you're dealing with Democrats. They're not in favor of immigration. They had someone there from the Border Patrol who had done heroic things, and you had people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez unwilling to acknowledge the man's service or bravery. It's just ridiculous. And so Nancy Pelosi, not being an idiot, didn't want that exposed on national TV, so she made her effort, though she really knew it wasn't going to work, to try to dissuade Trump from having the speech. But Trump had the speech anyway. And 3 out of 4 Americans who watched it liked what he had to say. That doesn't help Nancy Pelosi going forward when all she's going to do is investigate a man that 3/4 of the electorate like. Or at least they like what he says. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force and internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. Freedom in America Radio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, for those who are unaware of the history of income taxation in the United States, this is something that happens every time, whether it's the 1920s, 1960s, 1980s, the 2000s. When income tax rates fall, income tax revenues rise. It's almost as reliable as the law of gravity. So in the 2010s now, the feds have cut income tax rates, and voila, now they enjoy a record high income tax revenue haul. More money than ever is coming into the Treasury. The interesting thing is it's so predictable that Ray Charles and Helen Keller could have told you this was going to happen. However, white progressives and their pets of color seem to know less than the blind and the dead. They keep taxing folks highly and hard, and then they wonder what happened to the money, and more importantly, where their people went to. The state of New York, in the last 2 months prior to this one, so basically December and January, saw a $2 billion decrease in tax revenue. And the governor of New York, one Andrew Cuomo, was not exceedingly pleased about that.
Governor Cuomo says the new federal tax law is having a disastrous effect on New York State. The state is facing a $2.3 billion drop in revenue, in part due to Washington's cap on state and local tax deduction. Cuomo says the decline in revenue is far worse than anticipated, and as Samantha Damasio reports, he'll have to revise his budget plan.
$2.3 billion as a drop at this point in revenues is as serious as a heart attack.
Governor Andrew Cuomo listing a number of possible contributing factors, but he's primarily pointing to the $10,000 cap on state and local tax deductions. Since it took effect last year, he says the state is just now seeing the impact for the first time.
SALT must be repealed.
The governor says New York has one of the most progressive tax codes in the country. The 1%, the wealthiest New Yorkers, produce nearly half of the state's personal income tax revenues. But he acknowledged that also creates a very fragile economy because you're now relying on a very small amount of people.
Tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich leave. And now what do?
Comptroller DiNapoli says the legislature must now work together to figure out a solution to make up the difference.
We do have to be prepared for what seems to be a storm very much on the horizon.
I don't believe raising the taxes on the rich, I think that would be the exact worst thing to do right now. You also don't have the I don't think you have the ability to reduce taxes on the rich because you would just expand that shortfall.
That was Samantha Damasio reporting. Senate Republican leader John Flanagan responded to the announcement today saying, quote, Governor Cuomo acknowledged for the first time today that it's not the weather that's causing New Yorkers to leave. It's the incredibly high taxes. Flanagan went on to say that Senate Republicans have already proposed measures that would cut certain taxes and improve the economy, and he hopes they can reach some sort of an agreement soon. The state budget is due in April.
Notice certain things. Cuomo blames the state and local tax limitation in the federal tax law. Well, what does that have to do with your tax rates? All that does is say that certain people with a certain high level of income who are being taxed heavily by you, they cannot deduct from their federal income tax returns what you tax them for. And the cap is at $10,000. So if property taxes and state withholding for those who are employed or other taxes exceed $10,000, then everything over $10,000 is fair game for the feds. The majority of people in New York don't have $10,000 in state and local taxes to deduct. They're okay. But as you heard in the clip, the top 1% of earners in New York pay 46% of taxes in the state. I'm laughing because every time I hear the rich don't pay their fair share bull crap, you can find this in New York. You can find this in California. You can find this in Indiana. You can find this in New Jersey. You can find this nationally. The top 1% in the country control about 25% of all income, but they pay 40% of all taxes. New York has even gone above and beyond that. It's ridiculous. And now the problem is the federal government, which has reduced taxation. Let me help you out. The federal government is taking less money from people overall, and they are experiencing record revenues. How is the federal government taking less money from the people in your state causing you a shortfall? Oh, that's right. You don't tax everybody in the state, do you? So here is my question. So you're saying that the problem now is the federal tax law. So what was the problem 2 years ago, Mr. Cuomo, when you were still governor and you guys were going through a tremendous tax shortfall then?
Compared to the same period a year earlier, the state's chief fiscal officer said on Thursday the New York State tax collections fell $1.3 billion, or 3.5%, to $36.9 billion through the first half of fiscal 2016. New York State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli said in a mid-year report that personal income taxes, the state's biggest revenue source, lagged expectations. New York is not alone. State revenue growth has reversed around the country. As a result, the global investment management firm Conning Inc. said last week the credit quality of U.S. states has fallen, even as the national economy continues expanding. Conning's report said in total, U.S. state tax revenues fell 0.7% to $493.8 billion in the first 6 months of 2016. It is the first extended decline since the Great Recession.
That was 2016. What was 2016? Oh, it was the last year of the Obama presidency, where the GDP growth was a robust 1.6% for the year. So you lost money before because the economy sucked. That's not your reason now, and that's not what you're citing, because you know you can't say that. You are basically telling me that people are voting with their feet, and that's a problem for you. Yeah, it's a problem. It's your problem. You don't have to tax people the way you do, but you don't want to change your tax structure. You want people to basically bend over, drop their pants below their knees, and say, "Thank you, sir, may I have another?" They're not willing to do that as much. It's not just places like New York and New Jersey, which has the highest taxes, if I remember correctly, in the country. This was going on as far back as 2014 in Illinois.
More people are leaving Illinois than moving into the state. But the story is bigger than that, according to an Illinois think tank who studied the issue. News 10's John Swanner has more.
More people left Illinois in 2011 than any other state in the country, including Washington, D.C. That's according to the Chicago-based think tank, Illinois Policy.
We lost people, we lost income, we lost taxpayers, and it speaks to the problems that we're facing today.
Here's what Illinois Policy found. Illinois lost 24,000 taxpayers and 26,000 dependents to other states. When these taxpayers left, they took their incomes and income taxes with them.
The average income of the people who left in that year was $63,000. The average of the people who came in was $53,000. So it's a very bad trade-off. We're losing $10,000 per migrant in and out, but then also there are more people leaving than there are coming in.
The net loss of adjusted gross income in Illinois in 2011 was $2.5 billion. That's $600 million more than 2010.
If people are moving out of the land of Lincoln, where are Illinoisans moving to? Illinois Policy says it's been popular for years for them to move to places like Texas and Florida. But they're also moving to neighboring states like Indiana, whose tax structure are much more business-friendly.
2011 is also the same year the Illinois General Assembly implemented a huge income tax increase. And Illinois Policy says another tax increase will simply compound the problem.
When they raise the taxes more and more, it's just driving more and more people out of the state.
With photojournalist Tony Casasilla, I'm John Swanner, News 10.
Illinois Policy says the IRS should release 2012 and 2013 data in about 2 months.
They were losing $10,000 in income per exchange, someone who left and someone who came in, but they were losing more people than came in. So in that case, they were simply losing the $63,000 in income up front. They hemorrhaged money. It went into the billions. That's what happens when you tax people and they're not stupid enough to continue to give their money to a government that doesn't know how to use it. They leave. They leave. Now you say, well, that's 2015, and that other thing was 2016. Well, the Democrat problem with trying to keep people to stand still for high taxes, that problem didn't go away when Donald Trump came into office. As a matter of fact, it seems to have gotten worse. Stu Varney, on his program on Fox Business Network, talked about it in March of last year.
What's this? Democrats trying to help the 1%? The left, having bashed the rich for donkey's years, now turns around and defends them? What? Well, yes, it is true. This does require some explanation. Democrats in California and New Jersey want to convert state and local taxes into charitable contributions. There's a switch. Under the new tax law, local taxes are not fully deductible. So in high-tax states like California and New Jersey, the 1% will be paying a whole lot more. The Democrats take one look at that and they instantly realize they got a problem, because the rich can move and take their money with them. It's happened before. In Maryland, the state imposed a millionaire's tax. Many of those millionaires promptly left. Maryland lost money. It's not that Democrats suddenly love the 1%. Oh, no. It's their money they want and need. California gets almost half its income tax revenue from its high-income earners. If even a few of them leave, California takes a huge financial hit. Where would they go? Well, how about Nevada? No state income tax there. Or for New Jersey and New York residents, how about Florida and Texas? No state income taxes there either. This is what worries the Democrats, who've been running high-tax states for years, the exodus of the rich. Their answer to the problem surely will not fly. The IRS is highly unlikely to allow a tax to be converted into a charitable gift. Ain't gonna happen. Bottom line, high-tax states are stuck. They have one option, cut their own taxes, and they will never, ever do that. The exodus of the 1% has already started. Looks like we'll become a stampede.
You've got to be kidding if you don't understand how dense Democrats are about this. The Boston Herald ran a story, I believe it was this morning, the 10th of February. They ran a story that said the millionaire tax amendment rises again at the State House in Boston. They want to tax millionaires. 4%, a 4% tax on the portion of an individual's annual income that exceeds $1 million. So what you're telling someone, if they have income that's over $1 million, every bit of that that's over that, I got to give another 4 pennies per dollar to the government. So what if my income is $2 million? What if so that means, okay, well, over $1 million, I'm already getting taxed through the yin yang up on that first million. That second million, you want another $40,000. There are people in this country that don't make $40,000 in a year. You want to take that off of one person. And the argument that, well, they can afford it, exactly, that's why they move. That's exactly why they move. And Massachusetts is brain dead. They see what's happening in New York. They see what's happening in Illinois. They see what's happening in California. They see what's happening in New Jersey. They see all this happening, and they are stupid enough, or they believe other people are stupid enough to give them their money when they have the option. Your weather sucks. Why should I stay here and enjoy sucky weather 5 months out of the year and pay you for the privilege? Are you serious? This is a Democrat problem. This is not a national problem. You don't have an exodus of people from the state of Texas. Their net is people are coming there. Same thing with Nevada. Same thing with Florida. I dare say New Hampshire, which has no state income tax, is probably enjoying a net influx of people, even though it is in the Northeast where it's cold and they're surrounded by a bunch of progressives. Do you want to know how really brain dead people are? You got to go out to California to see the real brain death. I live in California, and I'm not planning on staying here indefinitely, but I do live here. And I came across this. This is back from December, the end of last year. And the state of California was looking to find another way to get money out of people. And if you're not aware of it, I would guess that you would have a hard time just picking it out of the air what it might be.
Very creative. This is just political BS.
Consumer Watchdog's leader Jamie Court fired up about the California Public Utility Commission's plan to charge a fee for text messaging.
I find it appalling that there is going to be a text tax because it's so visceral, it's so anti-consumer, and we haven't established a need for it.
But the CPUC says it does need the extra money to support programs like California Lifeline, which provides phones to low-income residents.
It says it's a government phone. The government should pay for it. Not the people, but the government.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, if it helps somebody, who's like in danger or, their kid's sick or something like that, they need to get picked up, I'm all for it.
According to a CPUC report, revenue for the program is falling as more people drop landlines and make fewer voice calls in favor of texting. The state reportedly lost more than $5 billion from 2011 to 2017.
How often would you say you text?
24/7, all day, every day. It's my job.
I text for work, I text socially. There's no way to count. Hundreds at least.
It is unclear if the surcharge will be per text or a flat fee.
That would not be cool to pay a tax for text when I already pay for the service.
Consumer groups vowed to fight the so-called text tax, one text at a time.
We are certainly going to urge the legislature to do an independent audit, and we're going to talk to the chairs of the relevant committees to see if they will take the Public Utilities Commission to task, because this is really a power grab.
And late this afternoon, the FCC ruled that text messaging falls under the Communications Act, and it is not considered a telecommunications service, and that finding could stop the CPUC's proposal in its tracks. The CPUC expected to take up the text tax in its next meeting on January 10th. In Los Feliz, Stephanie Stanton, Fox 11 News.
So far, I haven't seen a text fee on my statement for services, but you got to understand, this is how desperate they are. They want your money by any way they can get it, and California is losing people. What they don't believe is that taxing people is a way to make them get away from you. Economic liberty means, at its core, I am free to make as much money as I legally can and keep as much of it as I can possibly do for the benefit of myself and my family. I do not earn money to benefit the government. Any government. I don't get up in the morning and go to work to say, man, I am so happy that I'm going to do something that'll benefit the government. That's not the way it works. But let's recap on this. Income tax rates at the federal level, they increase income tax revenues. Actually, it happens at the state level as well. Now, the feds, they cut the rates, and they now have record revenues. But more folks with more money in the state of New York is hurting them. Why? Because they only tax the very wealthy. High state taxes are making rich folk leave New York and other states. And when they go, their money doesn't send a forwarding address to Albany, which is the capital of New York, or Sacramento, the capital of California, or Trenton, the capital of New Jersey. Doesn't do that. As I said, the tax situation in New Jersey is worse. And they're hemorrhaging folks just like California and Illinois. The thing I find interesting here is when people actually see that Democrats are all about their money, as in taking it from them, and they run to other states where they take less money or take no money, how's that going to impact the number of seats that each state has in Congress when they next do a census? How will that redistribute electoral votes? Because that follows congressional districts as well. Interesting. Curious. Bottom line, the state of New York has a problem. It's their problem. And the obvious solution to getting more money, which is exactly what the feds did, is right in front of them. And their ideology keeps them from recognizing it. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force of internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida, Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the first hour. Well, white progressives and your pets of color, you can now say it out loud. Jussie lied. Jussie Smollett, who I believe it was a week ago Tuesday, came up with the fantastic tale that two white men in ski masks accosted him after he left a Subway sandwich shop at 2 in the morning. They were carrying a thin piece of rope and a liquid substance. Yeah, at 2 o'clock in the morning. And they found him in Chicago, of all places, beat him up because he was homosexual and black, yelled things like, "This is MAGA country," poured the stuff, whatever they had on him, put the rope around his neck, and ran off into the night. Of course, he left the rope around his neck or whatever it was for quite some time. The story was never substantiated by anybody. The police department in Chicago, oh, by the way, Chicago has about 30,000 surveillance cameras. It is the most surveilled city in this country. Now, they saw the cameras picked up Smollett leaving the sandwich shop, but it never picked up anybody coming near him. 2 persons of interest were discovered later on, and they finally figured out who they were, a couple of homeless guys who had never come near Smollett. He lied, and now the Chicago Police Department is becoming so confident that he lied that they, in a story recently released, the Chicago Police Department intends to charge Jussie Smollett if a false police report was filed. They think he's lying. There's no there. Are y'all hearing that yet? There's no there with Jussie. Jussie just lied. I'm sorry. This is just. I'm shocked. I'm shocked at this revelation. Because you know I'm on the other side of this, and I'm always told how genuine, honest, and moral that homosexuals are. And so how could such a thing be true? How could he lie about something like this? And what about all the love and support of his fans and his employers and his co-stars and the other folks that regularly get duped by the left? How could he do this? What type of person would do this? And I also wonder how many TMZ reports are going to have to get, thrown into the circular file, because they carried more water for this dude than can be found in Lake Michigan. This is terrible. What's going on? Why are the police taking so long? They have 12 detectives. How come they can't find anything? Because there's nothing to find. And now the police have given permission to all the white progressives and all their pets of color who ironically said that they won't believe that Jussie lied until the police say he lied, even though they don't believe anything else the police would ever say. Well, you can say it with me. Jussie lied. He just lied. Fascinating to me. Let me move on to another topic, which to me is even funnier than Jussie lying. Spartacus, Cory Booker, has carved out and zeroed in on the demographic that he believes will carry him to the Democrat nomination and all the way to the White House. He knows who it's going to be, and he's making it clear exactly who his core demographic is. Now, is it black men? No. Cory Booker is black in name only. He's a progressive, he's a bino progressive type with no agenda for black men. He has nothing for black men. He's never had anything for black men. You can't find any statement that he's ever made where his target for benefit was black men. Okay, so is it black women? Because there are people who consider Cory Booker to be an attractive guy. And he does, light-skinned as he is, he still qualifies as black. So is it black women? Don't think so. Because when's the last time you saw Cory Booker with a black woman? I think the last one was back in 2012. It was Gayle King, who's on the CBS morning news show now. And she still says, oh, we're still friends. So, she's kind of his beard for the time being. Of course, now he has come out and said that he has a boo. I don't know who the heck that is. He won't say who it is, which is kind of interesting. You're running for president, and I don't know that we've ever had a president who was unmarried at the time he was elected. I don't think so. And you think that your running Newark into the ground behind is going to pull something out? Wow. Okay. So it's not black women. Well, I'll tell you what, I know it's not white men, because for the most part, if I come across a white guy and I say Cory Booker, they usually respond with who? Or if I say it quick enough, they actually say Gesundheit. I mean, it's, So what about other women? So we're running that out. Well, back not that long ago, I think, he asked Mindy Kaling for a dinner date for her to come to New Jersey, and he gushed all over her in a Vanity Fair interview. But I don't think she ever made it to Jersey, and to be honest with you, if you dusted her for fingerprints, I don't think you'd find his on her. There's also his secret relationship with a single mother whom he got to come out and support his first campaign in New Jersey. He's got links to a Hollywood attorney, and there are rumors of him and some internet poet. But no one's naming any of these names and really putting them together. Most Hispanics and Latinos, that's a big demographic, but they seem to know him as well as white guys. So who the heck is Booker's base? I'll give you a hint. This is from the hearing where he questioned Naomi Rao, who is President Trump's nominee to replace Brett Kavanaugh on the D.C. Circuit Court.
In a 2008 article, you criticized the Supreme Court's landmark decision in Lawrence v. Texas, which invalidated the state laws that criminalize same-sex relationships. You said that the court's decision, quote, eschews older traditions in favor of an emerging awareness of the meaning of and the scope of liberty. What, in your view, should the Supreme Court have been in the business of upholding older traditions, as you said, of laws that criminalize same-sex relationships?
Well, Senator, those were some comments made in the course of an article about dignity and constitutional law, and of course, Lawrence is a precedent of the Supreme Court, which I would faithfully follow if I were.
Are gay relationships, in your opinion, immoral?
Senator, I'm not sure, the relevance of that to,
I think relevant your opinion. If you think African American relationships are immoral, do you think gay relationships are immoral? Do you personally believe that gay relationships?
No, I do not.
You do not believe that?
No.
Do you believe they're a sin?
Senator, my personal views on any of these subjects are things I would put to one side, and I would faithfully follow.
So you're not willing to say here that whether you believe it is sinful for two men to be married. You're not willing to comment on that?
Senator, no.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry?
I didn't hear your response.
My response is that these personal views are ones that I would put to one side. Whatever my personal views are on this subject, I would faithfully follow the precedents of the Supreme Court.
Excuse me, we're interrupting. I have 1 minute left. In 2013 article, you also criticized the Supreme Court's landmark decision in the United States versus Windsor, which struck down the provision of DOMA that defined marriage as only between a man and a woman. You said the court had found, quote, a novel constitutional right of two people's freedom to marry and to recognize same-sex marriages. And you said that the court's decision amounted to a political choice, not a judicial choice. What do you believe the Supreme Court's decision to respect the status of a same-sex marriage, how is that a political choice and not a judicial one?
Well, Senator, in that particular article, what I was saying is that in the case in Windsor, did not recognize same-sex marriage as a right. It only recognized the right to have your marriage recognized if the state provided such a marriage. Of course, that later step was taken in Obergefell, but Windsor, part of what I was explaining was that it was a rather empty right that was in that case.
And LGBTQ Americans have faced a long history of discrimination, long histories of violence, intimidation, bullying. Young LGBTQ youth in America report not going to school because of fear for their own safety at rates that are unconscionable. And a lot of the hard-won provisions that we're talking about became the law of the land very recently. So why is this administration currently trying to do so much to roll back transgender right protections and the like? And these matters could very much be brought before you under the regulatory conception that somehow protecting American citizens is burdensome.
Senator, I think, civil rights and equal protection of the laws are two essential values in our system. And if I were to be confirmed as a judge, I would firmly uphold that.
Have you ever had an LGBTQ law clerk?
I've not been a judge, so I don't have any law clerks.
Someone working for you.
I'm to be honest, I don't know the sexual orientation of my staff. So I take people as they come, irrespective of their race, ethnicity, sexual orientation. I treat people as individuals. Those are the values that I grew up with, and those are the values I would apply if confirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry. You had a spotlight to redo the whole Kavanaugh hearing, and you didn't talk about white Americans. You didn't talk about black Americans. You didn't talk about black men, black women. You didn't talk about Latinos. You didn't talk about that. You talked about LGBTQ MOUSE. That's what you talked about. 4.5% of the adult population. That's who you think is going to get you to the nomination. You don't have to believe me. That happened this past week. That was his questioning of a federal judicial nominee. And since you're running for president, you would think that you want to ask questions that speak to your core constituency. Well, that's what he did. That's exactly what he did. 4.5%, huh? I don't know how many electoral votes that's going to equate to, but that's Cory Booker for you. I'm going to turn this over to my good friend Ron Edwards, and after that we'll be back with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinking.
The leftist goons of death strike yet another blow against our unalienable rights. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, the Word of God and our Bill of Rights proclaim our unalienable rights, among them our life. However, the harbingers of death and doom are on a mad mission to destroy our inalienable rights and quality of life. Just recently in Vermont, so-called lawmakers introduced a bill that, if passed, would permit abortions at any time during pregnancy as a fundamental right to unlimited abortions, while at the same time proclaiming that a fertilized egg, embryo, or a baby do not have any rights at all. To add insult to this injury, Vermont lawmakers want to ensure that a person can purposefully refuse contraceptive, get pregnant, and terminate the baby anytime. Also, anyone can freely kill babies via abortion, whether they are medically qualified to or not. This bill also was designed to ensure that abortions on demand will remain available in Vermont, even if abortion is abolished nationwide. The refusal to recognize the rights of babies, embryos, and fertilized eggs is a direct affront to God, who gave us unalienable rights and whose Son, Jesus, died so that we could live eternally if we choose Him.
Fasten your seatbelts.
It's going to be a bumpy ride. I'm Ron Edwards.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it's made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinkin here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, the Old Dominion doesn't give a rat's behind about the turmoil that has turned the media and the political class upside down. What am I talking about? Well, in the state of Virginia, or the Commonwealth of Virginia more properly, the top 3 Democrat Party elected officials, the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the attorney general, are all embroiled in controversy. Now, 2 of these men are white, and the controversy surrounding those 2 involve race. The third one, which is the attorney general, is black. The lieutenant governor is black. And the controversy surrounding him involves sex. So let's start with the governor. The governor had a discovery, or it was discovered for him, that there was a yearbook in which he had a page, and it had a picture of 2 people in costume. One was in blackface, and the other was wearing a Ku Klux Klan outfit. You couldn't tell who either of the people were, but it showed up in a yearbook that on a page that bore his name. So the assumption is that he had something to do with it. He's denied that he had anything to do with it, and nobody has challenged that. Nobody's come forward and said anything to the contrary. And there have been calls for his resignation. Now, initially he said he apologized for the picture and everything else and all the hurt it may have caused. He then backtracked and said, I don't think that's me. And as I said, no one has been able to come back and give any information to demonstrate that either person in that picture is him. Further, he went so far as to say he had nothing to do with putting that yearbook page together, and he'd never bought a copy. He had nothing to do with the editing or anything. And his response as a result is, why should he resign? As a matter of fact, he reiterated his intent not to resign on Face the Nation this past Sunday morning in an interview that was aired, this past Sunday morning that he had with Gayle King of CBS.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. We begin with the chaos in Virginia's government and the scandals that have rocked the top 3 Democrats in the Commonwealth: Governor Ralph Northam, Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, and Attorney General Mark Herring. CBS This Morning co-host Gayle King has just returned from Richmond, Virginia, where she spoke to the governor in his only television interview.
I know this has been a very difficult week for you in the state of Virginia, so where would you like to begin?
Well, it has been a difficult week, and you know, if you look at Virginia's history, we're now at the 400-year anniversary. Just 90 miles from here in 1619, the first indentured servants from Africa landed on our shores in Old Point Comfort, what we call now Fort Monroe. And while
also known as slavery.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, while we have made a lot of progress in Virginia, slavery has ended. Schools have been desegregated. We have ended the Jim Crow laws, easier access to voting. It is abundantly clear that we still have a lot of work to do. And I really think this week raised a level of awareness in the Commonwealth and in this country that we haven't seen certainly in my lifetime.
And why you think you still deserve this job when so many people are calling for you to step down?
Well, again, we have worked very hard. We've had a good first year, and I'm a leader. I've been in some very difficult situations, life and death situations, taking care of sick children. And right now,
you're a doctor, yes.
Right now, Virginia needs someone that can heal. There's no better person to do that than a doctor. Virginia also needs someone who is strong, who has empathy, who has courage, and who has a moral compass. And that's why I'm not going anywhere. I have learned from this. I have a lot more to learn, but we're in a unique opportunity now. Again, the 400-year anniversary of the history, whether it be good or bad, in Virginia, to really make some impactful changes.
Of slavery in this country,
yes.
In this state, yeah. Did you ever think about resigning when the drumbeat became so loud? And by the way, they're still beating for you to step down.
I don't live in a vacuum. And so, yes, I have heard it. And this has been a difficult week. And again, I'm fine. It's been mainly difficult for Virginia and this country. So, yes, I have thought about resigning, but I've also thought about what Virginia needs right now. And I really think that I'm in a position where I can take Virginia to the next level, and it will be very positive. And, we have a number of inequities in this country right now and in Virginia, and we're in a position to really stop talking so much and now to take action with policy to address a lot of these inequities.
Gail, thank you for bringing us this interview.
A lot of mealy-mouthed talking around just to come out to the one thing that matters. I'm not going anywhere. Now, before someone says he's just being insensitive and everything else, well, the Washington Post published a poll on February 9th that said that Virginia is split on the governor's fate amid the scandal. 47 to 47. Why would you quit when it's a toss-up and you're only 1 year in and you survived the first week? You survived the worst period of this, so why should he quit? Not to mention, if what he's saying is true, if he didn't select the photo, if he's not in the photo, if he didn't set up the page, then exactly what did he do wrong? No one's been able to answer that. Here is the thing that is most fascinating, and this is from the article in the Washington Post. Actually, it's in the Mercury News, citing the poll from the Washington Post. The poll, conducted Wednesday through Friday, finds residents split over Northam's fate, with 47% wanting him to step down and 47% saying he should stay on. Northam counts higher support among, wait for it, black residents, who say he should remain in office by a margin of 58% to 37%. Hello? Whites are more evenly divided. Blacks, you come out and say somebody won an election 58% to 37%, that's a landslide. Oh, by the way, 7 out of 8 blacks voted for him. When he was running for governor against the GOP opponent, he got 7 out of 8 black votes. 7 out of 8. It was a monolithic vote. No different, well, actually a little bit less than what Barack Obama probably got and did get on a national basis. So blacks don't care about. Let's be clear. Political leftist blacks will scream racism all day, then they'll still go vote for Democrats. Non-political blacks are brainwashed at an astounding rate to vote for Democrats come heck or high water, and even when they think they've done wrong or may have thought they've done wrong, they're not going anywhere. He got 87% on election day. He still got about 60% now. So he's not going anywhere, guys. You may not like it. You may think he's a terrible person. And this is something that's been strange to me ever since I discovered it. There is, now, Northam, ran for governor in 2013. And he was running against a black bishop, black church bishop by the name of E.W. Jackson. I've met Mr. Jackson. He's a nice guy. He's a great guy. E.W. Jackson is black. And you can go out there on YouTube now and just type in Northam snubs Jackson, and you can find video clip of the two of them sitting side by side at the end of a television debate. They're seated with a moderator a few feet from them, no table, no podiums or anything like that. They're just sitting next to each other across from a television moderator. And at the end of the debate, Jackson puts his hand over to Northam for them to shake hands at the end of the debate. And Northam ignores him. And Jackson even taps him to get his attention, and Northam continued to stare straight ahead as though he was not there. Now, that's a more convincing argument that Northam might be racist than a picture from 35 years ago. Of course, it could also be that he just didn't like Mr. Jackson because of the campaign. He took things that were said personally. Could be. But nobody talks about that if you're going to talk about racism. Everyone wants to talk about something that happened 35 years ago. Well, newsflash, he's not going anywhere. So, as the organization that was founded to get the country to do this when Bill Clinton was in his heyday of scandal and struggle and troubles, MoveOn.org. You're not getting him. You're not going to get him. Move on. So what about the next guy, the Attorney General, next white guy? Because he is fascinating. Here's the story on him.
Breaking news on News Channel 11 and ABC Tri-Cities at noon. Another top Virginia Democrat admits to wearing blackface decades ago. Today, Attorney General Mark Herring issued a statement saying he wore brown makeup and a wig in 1980 to look like a black rapper during a party as an undergraduate at the University of Virginia. In a statement, he called the move a one-time occurrence and said it no way reflects the man he has become in the nearly 40 years since. The revelation comes as Virginia Governor Ralph Northam and Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax already face controversies, and Herring would be next in line to be governor after those two men. The lieutenant governor has been accused of sexual misconduct, which he denies, and many, including Herring, urged Governor Northam to resign after the discovery of a photo of someone in blackface and someone in a Ku Klux Klan outfit on his 1984 medical school yearbook page. We will continue to follow this breaking story out of Virginia's capital and bring you the latest updates throughout the day on WJHL.com.
That was from the 6th of February, so this guy is special. I know what I did 40 years ago, or 1980, 39 years ago. I know what I did. But I'm going to talk about the governor and say he needs to resign. Now, the interesting thing, how can you have done the exact same thing of which he's accused of, and you haven't resigned, but you want to call on the governor who's denying that he did it for him to resign? You have to understand Democrats got chutzpah. They really do. That is just bold. I don't even know how to describe it. I haven't heard anybody calling for his resignation of late. I'm not saying there weren't calls. There were calls for Mark Herring to step down. But it doesn't seem as though anyone has been talking about that over the past 4 or 5 days. They're still on Northam. They want Northam gone. But they're not talking about Herring. Herring's going to survive one way or the other. Now, whether or not he has a future in Virginia politics, time will tell. Whether Northam has a future in Virginia politics, including just running for a second term, time will tell. But let's be clear. Unless something radically changes, all this decades-old racism talk is much ado about nothing. And truthfully, that's pretty much what it should be. Why are you going to talk to me about what somebody was 40 years ago as though we're still stuck back there? You didn't vote for him in 1980. You voted for him in 2017. So why are we talking about this? Doesn't make a bit of sense. Now that brings us to our fun person, and that is Mr. Fairfax, Justin Fairfax, Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. His issue is not racism. He is being accused of serial rape. 2 women have come out on him. So, what's his story? CNN ran a report on this on 8 February, and it was kind of enlightening to me.
We have breaking news coming in from Virginia, where the state's lieutenant governor just denied a second woman's claim of sexual assault. Let's go to CNN's Ryan Nobles working the story for us. He's joining us live from Richmond. So what's the latest, Ryan? What are you learning?
Yeah, that's right, Wolf. This second woman, Meredith Watson, put out a statement through her attorney about a half an hour ago where she accuses the Lieutenant Governor, Justin Fairfax, of rape when they were both college students at Duke University in 2000. This is what Watson said through her attorney. She said, quote, Mr. Fairfax's attack was premeditated and aggressive. The 2 were friends but never dated or had any romantic relationship. Ms. Watson shared her account of the rape with friends in a series of emails and Facebook messages that are now in our possession. Additionally, we have statements from former classmates corroborating that Miss Watson immediately told friends that Mr. Fairfax had raped her. Of course, Wolf, this second accusation comes just days after Dr. Vanessa Tyson, another woman, claimed that she had been sexually assaulted by the Lieutenant Governor back in 2004 during the Democratic National Convention. Now, at that time, the Lieutenant Governor had forcefully denied those accusations, and he's forcefully denying these accusations tonight as well. This is what he says in a statement. He says, quote, I deny this latest unsubstantiated allegation. It is demonstrably false. I have never forced myself on anyone ever. I demand a full investigation into these unsubstantiated and false allegations. Such an investigation will confirm my account because I am telling the truth. I will clear my good name, and I have nothing to hide. I have passed 2 full field background checks by the FBI and run for office in 2 highly contested elections with nothing like this being raised before. It is obvious that a vicious and coordinated smear campaign is being orchestrated against me. And Wolf, this is perhaps the most important thing he says in this statement, I will not resign. Now, despite the fact that the Lieutenant Governor seems insistent that he will not leave office despite this flood of controversy that is surrounding him right now, the calls for his resignation have already begun, and they've come from the highest levels. The former governor of Virginia, someone still very influential here in the Commonwealth, Terry McAuliffe, tweeting just a few minutes ago, quote, the allegations against Justin Fairfax are serious and credible. It is clear to me that he can no longer effectively serve the people of Virginia as Lieutenant Governor. I call for his immediate resignation. And of course, Wolf, this would be a very damaging scandal under any circumstances, but when you take it in the context of the fact that the governor is currently embattled after he appeared, or there was a racist photo that appeared in his medical school yearbook, and the Attorney General is also facing a scandal when he admitted just a few days ago that he appeared in blackface while in college, and this is a state of turmoil for the Commonwealth of Virginia. There have already been calls across the board for the governor to step down. He has said that he is not going anywhere. Those calls were renewed in many respects yesterday. Now we have the lieutenant governor facing an increasingly difficult controversy. Well, frankly, there is no clue specifically how this will resolve itself, and the people of Virginia remain in a state of turmoil here as these controversies continue to mount.
Yeah, the turmoil clearly continues. Ryan Nobles for us in Richmond. Thanks very much.
Let's work backwards here. The second woman, I don't believe a word she's saying. Why would you? No, let me make sure. You're saying that somebody raped you. And you told everybody but security, you told everybody but the police, you told your friends who are willing to say, yeah, she told me that this happened, but you didn't tell anybody who could hold him accountable for what he... Really? And now, 15 years later, you want to start talking about it? Really? Is this Dr. Christine Blasey Ford in blackface? With a slightly better story. Because if you remember with Ford, nobody backed her up. I don't get this. The Dr. Vanessa Tyson account reads a little bit more credible, but I have the same issue. You're saying that somebody forced you to have oral sex. Really? Okay. And you write, you wax eloquent in describing the account. Writing it down in graphic detail. And you never took that account to the police? And let's not forget, 2 FBI background investigations, field investigations were done on Fairfax, and nobody comes up with this stuff. And you want me to believe that this dude forced one woman to have oral sex and forcibly raped another, had 2 FBI field investigations, and nobody knew about this. Nobody. It's the same nonsense with Kavanaugh. He went through 6, and nobody knew about Christine Blasey Ford. Let me help you out on something. There's as much proof that Fairfax committed a sexual assault of any kind as there is that Northam is a racist. And that is thin evidence at best. I say everybody survives. Whether or not they should is a whole different thing. But you want these guys gone for reasons that have nothing to do with anything other than the fact that you don't like them. Now, I don't like them because they're Democrats. I'd never vote for a Democrat. But I also don't live in Virginia. And the state, the white folks are split, and the black folks are saying, I don't think at least the governor should go anywhere. And I doubt that they're asking for anyone else to resign. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Let me begin with a clear statement here. I am not a Candace Owens fan. That is not to say, oh, by the way, and I never have been a Candace Owens fan. That is not to say I have anything against Candace Owens, or does not mean that I disagree with her message. I don't have any dirt on her. She didn't mistreat me or do something bad to me. I don't have any secret Candace Owens story to tell. I'm just not a fan. And I don't want to defend Candace Owens in the remarks I'm getting ready to make, because one, she's a big girl and she's already demonstrated she can take care of herself quite well. Also, as far as I can tell, she didn't really say anything that required a defense. And the third thing is, for those who haven't figured it out yet, I don't defend people. I don't even defend me. So I'm definitely not going to defend another adult who can handle their own affairs. But I will take this opportunity to illustrate the treatment that she has received and help people to understand how they're being manipulated by the press, or certain members of the press at least. Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk who launched Turning Point USA, he and Candace Owens were in Great Britain back in December. I think it was London, to be specific, for the launch of Turning Point USA's British chapter. So they were there for that. And, of course, since it's their organization, they, of course, were speaking to those who were gathered there and wanted to be part of their movement. And a question was asked. I cannot tell you what the question was. I can only tell you that when you pick up the video, not the audio, which I'm going to play, but when you see the video of what happened, it becomes rather obvious that Candace Owens was not even the person giving the first answer to the question. A question had been asked. Charlie Kirk spoke first. And then he handed the microphone after he had given his remarks to Candace Owens, and here are her words.
Yeah, I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. You know, he was a National Socialist, but if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German, everybody to look a different way. That's not, to me, that's not nationalism. So in thinking about how it could go bad down the line, I don't really have an issue with nationalism. I really don't. I think that it's okay. It's important to retain your country's identity and to make sure that what's happening here, which I think is incredibly worrisome in terms of the decrease in the birth rate that we're seeing in the UK, is what you kind of want to avoid. So I don't have anything problem. I have no problems with nationalism. It's globalism that I try to avoid.
So you got selective video editing. There's a longer clip. This whole thing obviously was videotaped. But whoever got hold of this, and it seems like it started with BuzzFeed, they decided to edit out the original question, and they decided to edit out Charlie Kirk's response. But if, like I said, you see the video, you can see that she is being handed the microphone from Charlie, and she begins with saying that I agree. So she's following on to his comments. So that was the nice video editing. Now, I'm not gonna try to say that there was any utility in mentioning Hitler's name, but mentioning Hitler's name in Great Britain has a slightly different connotation in context than mentioning him here. He's just he's a third rail here. And so, as is the norm for what we call modern reporting, the context in which she gave her remarks, well, that's gone. It's just gone. And we replace it with an unflattering headline. Candace Owens says Hitler was okay. Oh, wow. Okay. And again, it's pretty much unwise to mention Hitler in any context around any American media, but, things go the way they go. Now, to me, this is just me, probably worse than the comments themselves, which were taken out of context, obviously. She made what I consider the mistake of going out there in February 2019. She made her comments in December of 2018. She comes back in February 2019 with a response to attacks on her comments. And I wish she had not done that. Here is part of what she said to those who were attacking her for comments made back in December.
Oh, hello. Random Periscope, because I just turned on my phone on my Twitter for the first time today, and I had all of these notifications from journalists quoting, being like, Candace Owens launches a defense for Hitler's form of nationalism, some of the most crazy, and this is it's actually so insane, it's so ridiculous, that it could only come from BuzzFeed, which is obviously scum of the earth publication. But just to clarify this, because I had about 50 emails from journalists reaching out asking for clarity, I was at an event in the UK, and a question was asked, not about Hitler, but about the difference between, we're talking about globalism versus nationalism. I think the person asked how can we as people that, believe in the sovereignty of our nations avoid being called nationalists? And I thought the person was sort of implying that nationalism is a dirty word, and we see that a lot in America, that nationalism is sort of conflated with, for some reason, Hitler. Like that the only interpretation or the only understanding of the word nationalism that people seem to have in America is they instantly think of Hitler. And I think that that's really, really wrong, and that we have to almost correct the record on that. I don't view nationalism or believing in the sovereignty of your nation first, like Trump employs an America First policy, Bolsonaro employs a Brazil First policy. When the sovereignty of your nation is being threatened by outside forces, it's very important that we sort of stand on our own 2 feet and say that we are going to put our nation first. So I answered the question and said to them just that, which is that people wrongly conflate the word nationalism to mean that Hitler was a National Socialist, but in my interpretation or from my understanding, I would make the argument that he wasn't a nationalist. He was a homicidal, psychotic maniac who was bent on world domination outside of the confines of Germany, and he wouldn't say that he was a nationalist because he wasn't about putting Germans first. There were German Jews that he was putting into camps and murdering. He was a mass murderer. So that's what the argument that I was making on stage, is that this man by no means should be considered a nationalist. Everything that he did was just being a psychopathic murderer hell-bent on world domination. So Trump.
She went on for about another minute and a half, but I had a problem with that because we live in this era of the politics of political, or the politics of personal destruction. And in that era, I'm just going to make it very clear, if you're explaining something you said, then you're losing and you're taking heat. You never explain it. If it wasn't wrong, it wasn't wrong. But to go out there and try to explain it, now you have elevated the attacks because you're dignifying them. I think that was a mistake on her part. That's just me. Personally, I'm not moved by Hitler comments that are quoted by the media, regardless of who said them. They stopped communicating anything apart from somebody's own preconceived notions decades ago. You just say Hitler and people think what they think about Hitler. They haven't heard anything else you said. And today they're mostly a tired bullet in the gun of the political left. And the left have been gunning for Candace Owens since she was a budding YouTube star. Because they actually recognized her skills and appeal before anyone who actually likes America or loves America did. They saw her and said, "Oh wow, she's different. She's gonna be a problem." And this looks like their best chance to date to try to put her on mute. It also looks like the leftists have taught most everyone to respond to the mention of Hitler like roaches when the lights suddenly come on in the kitchen. You either go for that 4.2 second 40 time, or they just hold motionless, hoping that no one notices them and therefore steps on them. And more than a few so-called black conservatives are among the hard-running roaches, okay? They are acquiescing to calls, agreeing with it, oh, she shouldn't have said that, and even joining calls for Owens to step aside and fade away. And they're trying to put as much distance between her and themselves as they can. And the folks who are online seem particularly weak, spineless, and also pretty quick. They're getting away from her as hard. Now, some of her quote-unquote non-black support isn't much better, but they are kind of the motionless roach types. Since they're not black, they're just trying to be still and quiet and wait and see if she survives and when it might be safe to say her name in polite company or even impolite company. Again, right now she's kind of toxic. So folks are getting away from Candace Owens, and if the cavalry is coming to save her, they're taking their sweet time. And for me, it's always interesting to see how eager folks are to throw away a lifetime of work. And I know Candace Owens is is a very young person, but she's put herself into this. And it just interests me how eager people are to throw away someone's life work, even when they worked on ideas and concepts with which they agree, they'll throw that away when the work wasn't theirs. Well, I'm not going to throw Candace Owens away, but as I said, I'm not a fan. And on a more supportive note for her, not everyone has gone white flag on Owens, at least not yet. The Boulder County Republicans, after hearing about her comments, they have not canceled or disinvited her from a speaking engagement. So going forward, we'll see how strong she and her message is. Because we already know how weak some of her people are. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinkin', we'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in Internet Conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3. Final segment of the show. The Boy Scouts of America have betrayed the culture. Now, I don't know how many of you have been paying attention to this. They've been doing this for quite a while. For example, they folded to the homosexual agenda back in 2014 when Robert Gates was associated with the Boy Scouts of America and brought the same thinking that put don't ask, don't tell in the military, that brought homosexuality and acceptance thereof into an organization whose motto indicated that they would be morally straight. Interesting. Well, fast forward a few years, and actually on the 1st of February, for those who were unaware, you have something like this occurring.
3, 2, 1, go!
It's a brand new day for Troop 1625.
I feel like I've just been waiting forever and ever and ever.
But that wait is over, and now these Girl Scouts are taking on another title, Scouts VSA.
They can do everything that the boys can do.
Starting today, girls around the country can take on a slew of physical challenges.
Are you going to do the test? You're going to do the test, right?
Push-ups, running, sit-ups.
Go!
And all of it leading up to becoming an Eagle Scout.
My daughter is going to get to have the same experience that I had as a scout, and that's very exciting for me.
Troop leader Brian Mukes has been taking these girls on adventures since they were 6.
He is like so excited. He will squeal like a little girl sometimes when talking about it.
And Isabella?
27.
27, all right. Rachel?
23.
Just hang there, let your back kind of stretch out, and then we will measure your flexibility.
And now he'll guide them towards merit badges in everything from rock climbing to swimming.
We get to learn shotgun shooting, archery, and all that kind of stuff. Kind of competitive.
And she's not the only one.
Yes, I like competing against the boys and showing them that we're better.
But Troop 1625 isn't leaving behind its roots as Girl Scout Troop 625.
We still do both.
It's just a wonderful opportunity for them to be able to participate in both curriculums.
A challenge that 12-year-old Sarah Boyd isn't afraid to tackle.
Do you have enough time for that? I'll make time. I will make all the time I need.
Two things about that. The one girl talking about the scout leader saying he squeals like a little girl. That speaks volumes. Men don't squeal like little girls. The second one was the girl coming in saying she wanted to compete against the boys and demonstrate that girls are better. They're not. Girls will never be men. They will never be better men. They will never be good men. They will never be men at all. And for those who do not understand that the Boy Scouts of America is actually something that was supposed to bring increased manhood, courage, patriotism, physical strength, etc., so on, bringing that to male members, young male members of American society. It wasn't for girls. They have their own organization for those who aren't aware. Well, this just didn't start on February 1st of 2019. If you go back a year ago, you had this occurring.
The regular Thursday Scout meeting. These aren't Girl Scouts, though.
They're Cub Scouts.
Tasty toolboxes, yes.
6 months after announcing an historic change, the Boy Scouts of America has begun admitting elementary school-aged girls into its Cub Scouts program. New Hampshire's Daniel Webster Council, which includes PAC 154 in Durham, is among more than 170 nationwide taking part in an early adopter program.
Our PAC leadership had been very supportive of this move when it was first announced, and so when they decided to have an application process to allow some troops to be early adopters, some PACs to be early adopters, our PAC leadership just really jumped on that opportunity.
And starting early next year, girls will be allowed to work toward earning Scouting's most coveted rank, a move that captured the imagination of 10-year-old Tatum Weir and her twin brother Ian.
My goal is to be an Eagle Scout with my brother, so be the first boy or girl twins. And I also want to do it with my best friend Eliza.
A scout is?
Trustworthy,
Boy Scouts officials say the move to integrate is aimed in part at making things more convenient for busy families.
cheerful, thrifty.
The Girl Scouts have been sharply critical of the move and vowed to double down on their commitment to empowering girls.
So we strongly feel that girls need an opportunity to be in a program designed with those concepts in mind that will challenge them with their interests in today's 21st century world.
Den leader Tuck Pescasolito says some girls joined because their brothers were involved, while others were drawn to the activities offered.
For the new girls that are in the program, I think a lot of it is just they have interest in some of the activities that Cub Scouts traditionally do.
Regardless of gender, PAC 154's leaders hope to see their young charges leave their mark on Scouting. Mike Householder, The Associated Press.
So the Boy Scouts kind of did a dress rehearsal on this, letting girls into the Boy Scouts by letting them into the Cub Scouts a year ago. So this has been going on for a while. Maybe you weren't paying attention. I know since I do not have children of that age anymore, it had kind of fallen off my radar. But it should be on everybody's radar, and we'll get into that in a minute. Actually, back in October of 2017, Fox News ran a segment where they had someone coming on and speaking about what was going to occur, first with the Cub Scout admission of girls and later with the Boy Scout admission of girls. Oh, by the way, Boy Scouts of America is no longer Boy Scouts of America. It is now Scouts BSA. So back in October 2017, there was a Fox News segment that went like this.
A move by the Boy Scouts shaking up century-old traditions, now allowing girls to join its ranks.
We've been looking for years at the educational value. Is Cub Scouting, the content, the curriculum, is it as relevant for little girls as it is little boys? And educators and our parents have said it absolutely is. So we provided a pathway so that girls can now participate fully in Cub Scouting.
That move creating some controversy. Here to weigh in, senior contributor for The Federalist. I get The Federalist, great magazine, Nicole Russell. Nicole, good to see you. So, anecdotally, what I've heard from a lot of people on radio and Girl Scout leaders is that leadership programs within the Girl Scouts are not as good as they are in the Boy Scouts. Is that true, or is that a problem within the Girl Scouts?
You know, whether it's true or not, I'm not sure exactly, but I think the problem here is that boys need to be left to themselves to do boy things and learn how to be men for boys, and girls can have their own organizations and pursue their own activities.
So what's the agenda then? What's the point? Is there an agenda here?
I think there is an agenda. I think the National Organization of Women is the group that really pressured the Boy Scouts into making this decision. I think it shows how powerful the feminist lobby is, and they succumbed to that. And so now we're trying to neutralize the sexes.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting that the feminist lobby group that you're talking about, they think they're the spokesperson for all young girls and all women.
Right.
But since this decision has been made, there's actually been a backlash from a number of women and a number of the girls speaking out about how important it is to be separate, for girls to have their own thing and for boys to have their own thing. I think since the early 70s they've had mixed events and things they do together, but there is something pretty powerful about, you know, having something that is just yours.
Yes, I think the differences between the sexes is not only biological and it's wired in, but it's really important now not to neutralize them, but to celebrate them, to keep them separate, because in that way boys learn how to be men from other men, girls learn how to be women from women, and then we can both complement each other later on.
You talked about this move being potentially part of the end of men. Other people have talked about a war on boys. What does this tell us about that?
I think when you try to neutralize the difference between the sexes, what happens is that eventually women, it's not enough to be equal. It's not enough to have equal opportunity and equal rights. the feminist lobby wants to be entitled, and they want to come into all these groups. And so eventually then boys have no influence, and they just become downplayed over time.
How is this going to work, though? I mean, when you think about Boy Scouts, you think about camping, you think about going on hikes.
Right.
How are you going to combine, and they've already been in some trouble of their own with issues in the past, how are you going to combine young girls and young boys? I worry about how that moves forward in the most productive way possible.
I worry about that too. The onus is on them to try to figure that out, and they're going to stumble into those problems, and maybe they will learn quickly that this isn't going to work, because they do need to be separate and they need to enjoy their own time together.
And it's been great to see the Girl Scouts come out really hard against this.
Yeah, that surprised me.
Nicole Russell, thank you.
So Nicole Russell of the Federalist comes very, very close to understanding what the issue is and stating it. But she doesn't get the entire issue. And she cannot, because she's not a man. I know how that sounds. I really don't care. But until you have a Y chromosome, you really don't know what that whole thing is about. Despite what progressives preach, boys and girls are not identical, and if you give them the same opportunities, everything will work out fine. That's not the way it is. They're not identical. They're not interchangeable. And with apologies to political correctness, developing within and among young boys the male character, male camaraderie, and male confidence that they need, that's essential to maintaining a viable culture. And it requires male-only activities. It's not about the activities themselves. It's about the fact that there are no girls involved. Activities in which females do not participate, and in environments free of female intrusion and interference. Why? Iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpeneth a friend's character. For those who do not recognize it, is Proverbs 2:27 and 17. Also, a man can see his face in water in the same way a man can understand the thoughts of another man. Women do not understand how men think. Let's be clear on this. We've gone for decades and centuries and years saying, men don't understand women. Bullcrap. We have an X chromosome. We don't necessarily like what you think. Some of the stuff you think is just silly to us. But we do know what it is. On the other hand, women don't know what men think. They don't have a Y chromosome. They don't understand how that whole thing works. The idea that men build each other and that men understand each other, that's among the reasons why organized sports are to be segregated by gender and kept that way. It's also why playing the game the right way is at least as important as winning the game, because games replicate war. And how men train, how well they know and trust each other in times of adversity determines if they can prevail in real contests where people die. Because of that, successful cultures always recognize that developing boys into men is a more urgent social need than developing girls, with the expectation that men, once developed, would be the protectors of girls and women. Unfortunately, Western culture, including America, is increasingly effeminate and works its own demise by diminishing male uniqueness and undercutting the natural male leadership and dominance just so it can elevate women, quote unquote, to their proper place, whatever that means. And this whole thing with the Boy Scouts is a metastasis of that effemination, for lack of a better word. The Boy Scouts of America stated purpose when founded in 1910 was to teach boys patriotism, courage, self-reliance, and kindred values. Kindred with who? With women? I don't think so. The Campfire Girls started as a Boy Scout sister organization that same year, and the Girl Scouts were founded in 1912, meaning girls have had their own organization for as long as the boys. So why do you seek to corrupt the male organization when no males seek to similarly compromise the female cooking, selling mega enterprise? We're not into that. We're not looking for that. It's really quite simple. Progressives hate masculinity. They deem it toxic and want it eliminated or diminished in favor of women wherever possible. That's all there is to it. And they know that no culture which values and maintains the unique dignity of men and masculinity can easily, if at all, bend to the progressive will or fully embrace progressive values, which leaves progressives with but two courses of action. Well, they can work to eliminate men. That's an abortion issue. But, of course, eliminating men entirely would also kill the culture. So that's kind of suicidal to do that, even for progressives. But if they're not willing to do that, they can sabotage masculinity to make boys and girls equal, which is code for making men subject to women and pervert the culture. They don't want to kill the culture, they'll simply pervert it. And it seems to me that they've chosen their path. Throughout the land now, you will find girls in all-girl Boy Scout troops. This isn't funny. It isn't cute. And while it is progressive, this isn't progress. It is a triumph of empty diversity and non-existent gender equality over the natural order that safeguards any society. Know this, when the Boy Scouts of America originally formed, Teddy Roosevelt, who was a former president by that time, applauded it as a response to decreasing American manhood. And now that same organization seeks to accelerate what Roosevelt decried. And that's our show. God bless you. God keep you. You got to understand how intensely progressives dislike everything about America and Americans. And you need to stand up and do something about it. Because if you don't, America dies with you. Until next week, do take care.
You've been listening to Black Man Thinkin' with your host, Stan Levy. Join Stan midnight to 2 a.m. That's late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And find him on the web at Black Man Thinkin' without the G. That's blackmanthinkin.com.